Hi guys, I just listened to a podcast about Goth representation and people of color from Cemetery Confessions. Listened to it and I took a few notes and I kind of wanted to just discuss some things. I will link everything down in the description box. Sorry, I just saw something go past the window. And I just kind of wanted to touch upon a few things. I did take notes. I recorded this earlier, but I decided to delete it because it was like over an hour long, and I just don't want an hour-long video. So what I'm going to do is create a timer that'll go off in like 30 minutes and make it so that it's like in 10-minute increments so that this video isn't super duper long. Right now it is 3:24. I want this to get me 3:25. Today's Thursday, not Wednesday. So I got one going off in 11 minutes from now. Another one going off in 20 minutes from now. And then another one going off in 50, not 50, in about 30 minutes from now. That'll be the final one. Okay, so I set my timer. I'm gonna turn the phone up, make sure the media is up, notifications, and everything. Okay, so I just want to make sure that this video isn't super duper long. Alright, touch upon a few things like how did you get into the scene? That's kind of a long question that I don't really want to answer in this video. Someone talked about misogyny in the culture and how she feels like it was either Leela or Mouse that said so, that she feels like that she doesn't experience misogyny in the gothic alternative music subculture where she is. She feels like it's more of a mainstream concept, and I have to disagree because I've experienced misogyny in, the gothic subculture as well as mainstream. I don't think that it's something that you leave behind when you embrace the goth subculture. I think that it's something that needs to be addressed. I think that because of this misconception, it's hard to speak up about things when it does happen because it's so rare, and because people in the scene are just so nice and so lovely, it's hard to speak up about like, oh, so and so is doing this or so and so is doing that. And that sort of mentality makes it hard for people to just speak out about different things and call out people when they're being problematic. I feel like I'm exposed to misogyny in the subculture at a different level than I guess most people because of modeling. And it's not even just from the modeling scene, it's from people that know that I'm a model and try and fetishize me or whatever for that. I don't know. Like, I feel like people are just weird or can be problematic, and it doesn't matter what scene you're in. So I definitely have to disagree that it's not just something that's in the subculture. It's not just something that's a part of mainstream society. I believe that it's everywhere and it needs to be spoken up about. I think it's because, like, in my local area, when people harass you in the goth club and you report it, that person get kicked out. And if people keep reporting that person as being problematic in some shape or form, then that person gets banned eventually, and then words gets out, and it becomes very hard for that person to interact and engage with the scene because they're not able to anymore because so many people are speaking up about them and how problematic they can be. I touched briefly about assimilation both in the mainstream world and assimilation in the goth scene existing as a black person. or as an African American, or as a brown person, as a person of color. And I feel like I've learned to both. I feel like I've learned to get to a point where I can embrace being unapologetically black as well as unapologetically goth. Unapologetically, how do you say that word? Unapologetically goth as well as being unapologetically black and a woman, and just embrace all those things into one, whether I'm in the goth subculture scene, around that type of environment, or a mainstream society, or in a professional environment, or whatever. Like, I've just learned how to be unapologetically myself and embrace all the things that I like, no matter where I am or who I'm around. And I've just learned to adjust in certain ways, and it's kind of a strange balancing act. Inspiring others by default of existing. I've definitely had people that I don't know run up to me and hug me, just thanking me for existing, thanking me for being representative of people of color within the goth scene, being representative of black people in the scene. I feel like maybe 5 or 10 years ago, it was really uncommon to see people of color within the goth and alternative scene, and if you did, it was just mind-boggling. And now I feel like I see it everywhere, especially because of the internet. Places like Tumblr, Pinterest, and Instagram in particular. There's a lot of Facebook pages that dedicate supporting alternative models who are people of color, black alternative women, and black tattooed people. Like, there are so many different pages like that. I feel like I see it more, and I do see more people of color within the goth subculture around me, as far as the clubs and parties and my general circle of friends goes. Because at first I just felt really lonely, because I was like the only goth. I was like the only. Not only was I the only goth person that I knew in real life, even when I was around other goth and alternative people, I was the only black person in that group. And then over time, I've met other people of color within the scene, and I've met other black people who identify as goth or alternative. And I feel like it's more common now. Some people said that they don't see much more people of color in the scene now than they did, 20, 30 years ago. And I don't feel like that's a reality in my world. I do feel like that's represented in pop culture and media. Like, you don't really see much representation of goth and alternative people as a whole within the mainstream media or mainstream, TV shows and movies. And even when they do, they're not the best people. A lot of times they have crappy personalities, or there's something off about their hair or their makeup. It just looks kind of silly or ridiculous, kind of costumey, if you will, and not any way that most alternative people would actually express themselves. And I don't know, just makes it seem unreal, and that kind of adds to the mystery of it. Because a lot of people, if you don't know anybody who is alternative, and you're not alternative yourself in real life, and you don't engage in any media, or you don't go out of your way to look for that sort of thing, then you're pretty much out of the loop. So yeah, what else do I want to talk about? Tokenism versus actual inclusion, and how to tell the difference. I feel like whenever, as far as like inclusion goes, it is a huge problem in the fashion scene within the goth community. It's a huge problem within the music scene in the goth community. It's a huge problem within the art scene in the goth community. It's a huge problem, across the board, no matter how you identify or how you connect with goth. It is a huge problem as far as inclusion goes. Even when I was reading a lot of fantasy and fiction books about vampires, fairies, witches, that sort of thing, there is little to no people of color in those books. And whenever there was a person of color, they were just there to be a supporting role for the main characters. They weren't allowed to be their own person. They weren't allowed to have their own stories, their own backgrounds, or anything. They were just sort of there to help the main characters and help define them and help define and shape those roles. And I had to kind of pull away because I didn't feel included in that, and I kind of felt away with a lot of goth magazines, a lot of alternative magazines, and I've stopped submitting to alternative magazines years ago because of the lack of inclusion. And then when they did feature alternative women of color, a lot of times it was very tokenized, like, oh, we already featured one black girl this year, we don't have to do any more. So if they accept one black person, other people get inspired by that. Okay, cool, this place is inclusive, I think I'm going to apply there. And then they just don't feature it. Or I just noticed a difference between how people of color are treated versus the mainstream. Okay, that was my first alarm. It's been 10 minutes. Okay, so tokenism, and my example of tokenism is what happened with Gothic Beauty. The cover girl of the magazine a few years ago was Dolly, and I forget her last name. But I was so excited when I saw her on the cover. I immediately rushed out and bought the magazine. I was so happy and excited for her. Like, oh my gosh, I never seen a black woman on the cover of like alternative or gothic magazine. And unless it's like a tattoo magazine, and usually those aren't always the best quality. So I was really excited. I went out and bought it. And I remember like kind of looking through the magazine and looking through it. I stopped supporting it years ago because other issues, but thought, okay, well, they're being inclusive now. I actually will make an effort to support them. And I just remember looking through the magazine, and there was no mention of her. There was no interview with her. There was no features on her or her career, how she got started, what inspired her, nothing like that. And when there was a guy on the cover of Goth Beauty magazine about 10 years ago, they made a really big deal about it. There was an interview of him in the magazine. There was an interview of him on the Gothic Beauty blog. And, I saw it all over Facebook. Instagram wasn't a thing back then. And, like, I saw, like, other articles kind of talking about it. Like, it was kind of a big deal because it just showed that, oh, we're being inclusive. And then there was never another guy on the cover of Gothic Beauty ever again. And it just kind of went back to their status quo. And I felt the same thing happened with Dolly. Like, they kind of used that as sort of a marketing technique to try and seem inclusive, but I feel like the way that they treated her was very tokenized. And that's just like the best example that I could put out there to like illustrate how people who are actually inclusive, people who fake inclusion and kind of use people of color as a token, as a marketing strategy to try and seem like they're hip or they're woke or whatever, and it's so fake. And I see those red flags and I know to stay away. Can you separate the artist from the art if the artist turns out to be problematic? This stems from a conversation that they were talking about with Combi Christ, and apparently a few years ago the lead singer or one of the lead singers of that band wore blackface, and people called them out for being racist, and lots of clubs and venues actually stopped playing their music, and it was a big deal. I didn't hear about it until now. Nobody in my circle has ever talked about it or anything, and obviously I was very disappointed because I do like the band and I've heard them several times, and it's a cool like industrial band, but now I just feel weird listening to them now, like, ew, like blackface. that singer is no longer a part of the band. He moved on to another one. And, they were talking about, we used to listen to this music after finding out that this person is problematic. And Mouse was just like, yeah, I'll still support them even if they're problematic because other people still like and enjoy their music. And they're still, a part of the scene. And Zach was just like, how can you support somebody that doesn't care about you, someone that has an influence and inspires other people with similar beliefs to come out? And if we tolerate people when they're being mildly problematic and, show that it's okay for people to be that way and be out about it, then it empowers other bigots to come out and speak, and it just, creates a whole issue, and we really just need to work to just nip that in the bud. And I completely agree. I'm not gonna sit around and listen to an artist that turns out to be problematic. And, I support those who support me, and if that person is not supportive of me in any shape, way, or form, then I don't want to support them. That is my personal belief. And that's kind of hard because there is a gray area, because I feel like a lot of people are problematic in some ways. I don't agree with everybody, but I feel like with racism and, but just blatant bigotry like that, you just need to take a stand, and you need to make it as uncomfortable and unsettling and unappealing as humanly possible to be that way, and just nip it in the bud and just show that it's not okay and it has no place here. So yeah, like, but if we talk about tags, like using hashtag AfroGoth or Black Goth or POC Goth, tags that are meant to be inclusion, can further other yourself and make it seem like they're separate from goth, when really just goth is goth and everybody's included, and you should need to have all these other tags within goth. And I feel like that's relevant when it comes to these little crappy online quizzes that say, what type of goth are you? Are you a romantic goth, a traditional goth, a cyber goth, a Victorian goth, a Lolita goth? Are you a rainbow goth? Are you a pastel goth? What type of goth are you? Like, I feel like that type of mentality applies to those little quizzes that ask you what type of goth you are, when if you're a goth person, you're allowed to explore different styles and different music and different things within the subculture as well as around it. You don't have to limit yourself to just being one type of goth. And that type of mentality does further other it and makes it seem like it's something separate from goth. Similar to how steampunk is separate from punk. Like, they're just two different movements. And steampunk and punk are just, they're not the same thing. So, that regard, it makes sense. But in terms of using tags like Afro Goth or Black Goth or POC Goth, the reason why we have to use those tags is because when you Google the word goth or alternative or punk or tattooed, you just see a sea of white. Even when you use the hashtag or type into Google Black Goth, you're just gonna see a bunch of white goths wearing black. And then other white goths started using this tag. So when you type that into social media, you see mostly white goths wearing black. You don't see people of color, you don't see black people, you don't see Hispanic people, you don't see anybody else. So you have to be more specific in those tags if you want to be found, and if you want to find other people who are people of color and you want to reach out and support them, regardless if they're models, musicians, tattoo artists, hairstylists, makeup artists, comic book artists, authors, or whatever. Like, you have to make an effort to look for people of color to support within the goth community, because they're not active. They're not the front face of goth. When you think of goth, you don't think people of color. We're often not included. Whenever I see a video that's like 40 years of goth, or 30 years of goth, or some BuzzFeed thing like, we tried being goth for a week, it's never inclusive of people of color. And we have to make an effort to make ourselves more visible so that we can support each other and we can see each other, because there are certain things that relate to us specifically. You know, makeup. You want to find black and dark skinned goths of color if you're looking for makeup, because if you watch a regular goth video that's makeup oriented, the first thing they're gonna say is, okay, so first we're gonna cover our face in white paint, and then we're gonna cover our face in white powder, and then we're gonna contour with black, and then we're gonna go over that with more black and black and black and black. And then, you know, we're gonna use this icy highlighter that's white, and then we're gonna go over this stuff around our eyes in white. And, you know, that doesn't apply to me. I'm not covering myself in white paint every day. And it was hard for me because makeup industry and the makeup videos were very new, and I did watch a few beauty bloggers in terms of, you know, trying to figure out foundation and concealer and highlighter and the under eye concealer and eyeshadows and eyeliner and stuff. And once I kind of learned some things and why they do the things that they do, I was able to cultivate that into my own style and figure out my own ways of doing things. I didn't really have other black or other people of color within the goth scene making those makeup videos for me to refer to. And every goth makeup video out there is like catered to whiteness. Okay, my second alarm. Okay, that was my second alarm, and I officially have 10 minutes. But yeah, like, it's important to have those tags so that you can find other people of color to support. And specifically, if you are a black goth or alternative person and you're looking for makeup ideas, you're looking for tattoo ideas, you're looking for hair ideas, you're looking for, I don't know, whatever, or you just want to support other people of color within the goth scene, you have to use those tags in order to find them. Because if you type in goth, alternative, punk, gothic, or even black goth, you're going to get a sea of white with little to no people of color. And even when you do use specific tags like Afro goth or Afro punk or POC goth or alternative black girl or whatever, you're still going to get a vast percentage of white people wearing black or wearing color, and then the people of color that you see are going to be spotty. It's not going to be even majority of the search, probably not even half. And it doesn't matter what social media you're using, it doesn't matter what search engine, like, that is the truth and that is the facts, and that's why those hashtags were created, so that we can find each other and so that it's easier to have more inclusion. I don't think that further others you and makes you seem like you're something separate outside of the scene. It just, you know, it includes you, because it will just get lost in the sea of whiteness otherwise. They talked about what can be done to help improve the relationship between goth and black goths as well as other people of color, and how you can go about having more inclusion within the goth scene. If you are a person of color and you are interested in anything whatsoever, like, you don't even have to be artsy, you know. If you're a goth and you're a doctor, a lawyer, I don't know, you do insurance billing, you're a plumber, something, and you want to create a platform out there to show how you incorporate gothness within your lifestyle, within your everyday life, how you celebrate it, how you embrace it, different ways that you connect to it, how you got into the scene, and all those other things. That you can create that content out there to help change the narrative, whether you want to do a blog, music video, YouTube, or I don't know, like a magazine or something. Like, you can put yourself out there as a person of color, and that already just creates more inclusion, and that helps inspires other people to put themselves out there. And if you want to support other people of color within the goth scene, you can use those tags that I mentioned above and so much more on Instagram, Facebook, any sort of blogs, any type of YouTube videos or whatever. And you can create your own content, and you can create, you can talk about things that you love and that you enjoy, and you can, I don't know, you just do certain things. I will link the podcast in the description, and within that video there's links to other things that you guys can check out, and you can support the people that were mentioned in the podcast. You can support the people that they mentioned, and everything will be linked, and you can just kind of dive down a rabbit hole and find other people and just make it more and more prevalent. If you are interested in supporting black owned businesses and such that are within the goth scene, then you can find them on Instagram, you can find them on Facebook. If you go to any sort of convention or festival or craft fair, there may be some people of color within the goth community in your area that you don't really know about because they don't have a social media presence. And they could make lots of awesome things that you just wouldn't know about. So just kind of get out there and support. There's lots of musicians, oh my gosh, too many to name. So yeah. Okay, so this video has been about 30 minutes. I've successfully condensed it. But yeah, you can reach out and support. If you are a person that's interested in creating content, you can create that content. And that is just how I feel like we can make things more inclusive and how we can help bridge the gap. And it doesn't have to be this whole us versus them thing. It doesn't have to be an us versus them thing, because everybody's included. When you go out to a goth club, you're going to see a wide variety of people depending on where you are, especially if you travel, and realize that it's not just white goths versus people of color goths. Like if you're goth, you're goth. And most of the times when you go out, people don't care if you're goth or not. People don't care if you identify as goth, alternative. They don't care about your race. They don't care about your religion. They don't care about any of those little things that you will see people getting into online debates about. Most people don't really care about those things. What they care about is, are you a cool person to be around? Are you going out and having fun? Are you a fun person to be around? Can I have a conversation with you? If I can't have a conversation with you, are you gonna at least just leave me alone? Like, most people don't really care. It's not, people don't really get into those type of debates in real life. People just don't have time for it. So I feel like, just going out and meeting new people and trying new things just will help reduce the stigma and reduce the misconceptions once people just get more experience and learn and grow. So that's just kind of my overall view of the podcast. There were some other things I wanted to talk about, but I want to create this video around 30 minutes. I don't want it to go up to an hour again. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out the podcast, check out the people in the podcast: Zach, Mouse, Mike, Leah. Check out other podcasts by Cemetery Confessions. Try and find other people to support if you're just interested. So yeah.